I am probably going to be more and more excited the more I watch of Blue Lock. This show is pure hype. It is getting adrenaline just pumped into your veins pretty much nonstop in an episode. Now, we knew our crew had to win, right? Because otherwise they would be eliminated. But it was a matter of how they would win. I was still in my head thinking it would go into overtime, but my boy Isagi in 5 short episodes goes from a character you say no way they'll ever be a striker and a leader of a team, the National, to holy shit, the potential's there. There's a long road ahead, but the potential's there. If you do want to see my full live reaction to today's wonderful episode, it is available on the Patreon, of course, as always, but this episode was just, it was adrenaline, man. It really was. And I love how rather than it just being a sports series where a character's naturally talented in a way that's obvious, like, oh, they can, in the case of soccer here, right? They're a great dribbler, or they're a great defense goalie, right? Just simple things like Isagi himself brings up, like, I'm not this, where's my talent lie? Like, what do I need to do? And Isagi's basically like the ultimate analysis machine, right? He can very much, over the course of a match, figure out plays. And the whole concept of being able to smell where a goal will be, it's not something he can rationalize. It's not something he can explain to people when asked, how the hell did you know to go there? He just had a hunch, and that hunch happened to be right. And the way they use the concept of monster, the demonic eye starts spinning, you can see the psycho imagery in their heads. And I love how it's such a great way to know when a character's about to be in the zone versus them still kind of panicking. And for the most of this match, Isagi, even Batra, were panicking because they were kind of getting their asses handed to them. So the way they visualize him getting into that kind of like, I can smell where the goal's going to be, it's a way for the viewer to connect to the insanity, but most importantly, it highlights a realistic thing. There are some people who are naturally able to dissect on the fly in a way that no one else can. He wouldn't be able to explain to his other teammates on the fly, so he puts himself in the way of saying, I just prevented something that would have lost us the game. Now I'm shooting this shit to space so someone will get it. And rather than being the person, like, it's amazing when you think about it. The first episode, he passed the ball and they ultimately ended up losing. He beats himself up. If I didn't pass the ball, I could have been a striker. I'm not a striker. I should have been a striker. And we had the reverse on this other team, where in any other situation, he could have been on the ground crying, and they all could have felt like they lost everything. But instead, he stopped it, he took the shot, and Batra, because I just love that bromance right there. There's something about Batra and Isagi who, at some point it's going to crush me, because eventually, if these two make it to like the very end or close to it, eventually there can only be one, right? So Batra would have to get eliminated for Isagi to succeed. But there's something about the way he just picks him up where he's just like, this man's a psycho just like me. I want to make sure he gets his moment to shine. And that goal, man, that impact, the stylization, the animation, everything about it was just pure quality and excellence. And I just love how that one goal really took him from the bottom right to the top. And I think what's interesting is once they announced that, oh shit, based on your goals, we're going to switch around the things. And honestly, I thought that teamwork, because really they started off very hostile, ended up by the end of the match, holy shit, hip hip hooray. It might have been a fluke of a shot, but either way, we're still here. They kind of felt like friends. We're sharing each other's dinners with each other. And then he gets announced as first. I was like, ooh, it's going to be way more hostile than ever. But instead, Isagi was like, I need to train my body, because he recognizes I'm not as physically fit as everyone else. But he has these moments of excellence, right? So he starts training and everyone starts following, because who the hell wouldn't? Would you really go back to bed, rest up because you need to, when the dude who you think you could easily beat is now literally number one? You can't run away from that. You gotta be there, and you all have to train. And I think that's what's going to be very interesting, because what they're trying to beat in our head, especially with Jinpachi, is that a striker needs to be someone that the team rallies behind. The one that will take that shot, that will get these shots that no one else can, but most importantly, the team is built around. And based on what we saw last week, and especially based on what we saw this week, he has a long road to go. I'm not saying he's anywhere close to it. In this instance, he was better than the other team because of what he did, but he has a long road to go. With that said, however, he is someone with a lot of potential. He may not be as physically capable as a lot of the people on his own team. And maybe he's not technically as skilled as in a bunch of these other areas. But what makes him, I think, the perfect candidate that could evolve into being the ultimate striker is that he can analyze things in a way that over the course of the game, he would realize where they're going to go. And if he can refine that skill, he could start doing that at the beginning of the game rather than it being at the end and, everyone's sweating, oh shit, are we going to have it in time? So the more he refines his craft, the more he'll be able to put himself in the positions where the team will then end up following because they know he realizes what to do in this situation. And I love the concept of what they're doing because it's a little heartbreaking in a way, right? If you lose your career. On the other hand, the longer you stay in Blue Lock, the better you get as a player, and you become someone who never could do something like Isagi. He even says in this episode, had I not been in Blue Lock, I wouldn't have been able to pull off the goal that I just did. So he basically improves himself. The unfortunate thing is that as you improve yourself, eventually someone gets eliminated and all that improvement can no longer be professional. And it's pretty heartbreaking. And that's why Chigiri was a character that kind of surprised me in this episode. I mean, all the characters really are, like, when I think, oh, I'm not going to care too much about them. But then you have this, leg injury. So you have someone who has kind of like that double whammy. You get eliminated in Blue Lock, you can't play professionally. If you get the same injury in the same location again, well, ultimately you can't play in general. So to see that conversation and him analyzing, being like, you're my way out, it's such an interesting conversation because he's gonna start trying harder eventually, and I'm interested to see where his and Isagi's relationship would go, because right now it's kind of butting heads. Even though Isagi's trying to pick him back up, he's trying to turn away. He was the one person not running at the end, so it's kind of interesting to see where they're going. But I mean, Jipachi's still my favorite character, I have to say. That dude he's so good. I mean, just the way that he was making his instant ramen, and then he was just eating the ramen as he was explaining, talking about his spice and everything. He's such an effective, leader of Blue Lock. Without Jinpachi and his poses, his almost L poses from Death Note, it just wouldn't be nearly as entertaining. But it's seriously, 5 episodes in, the production is still goddamn impressive. It's not even just the classic sports directing where the up close and personal shots cleanly detailed with the art, great animation with some key moves. It's the general passing of the ball. It's constantly moving and the characters feel realistic, right? I just love how they're going about presenting everything and how it just really doesn't feel like it's dipping in the slightest. I mean, Blue Lock has quickly gone from a show that I was cautiously optimistic to being one of my absolute favorites of the year, and I would be shocked if that changes anytime soon. I mean, they are definitely in a predicament because a bunch of teams are tied, so we're eventually going to reach a point where you can't have any fault, but right now there's still a little wiggle room, but that wiggle room's getting smaller and smaller the longer they play. But it's gonna be fun to see where they go from here, man. It easily could have been Isagi, and it kind of was at the start of the first episode, and just to see him walk across that, it felt like in any medieval movie after an army killed a bunch of soldiers, it's like him walking on the battlefield of all the fallen soldiers, and just so artistically devastating. And the fact that he's does it make me a bad person because I love this feeling? My boy's got a taste for the thrill of the hunt, and he's not letting up. But of course, as always, I pass the torch over to everyone. What did you think of this episode? How excited and hyped up were you? Were you feeling it like me, or did you feel something different? You let me know down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here. As I mentioned, you can support the Patreon if you want to see my full live reaction to today's episode, and you can also get video shoutouts forgive me, I'm going to need my phone for this one. And well, Alexis Pale is getting today, so I do appreciate the support. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.